Top Thrill 2, Top Thrill 2, we gotta talk about this ride. Back in the beginning of May, I went to Cedar Point for their opening weekend with the pure intent of getting on Top Thrill 2. Well, I did it. I actually did it. I got on Top Thrill 2. I was even able to get not one, not two rides, but 3 rides on Top Thrill 2. This is still so surprising to me. Like, there's no reason why I should have this credit. It was a huge gamble, and I pretty much put an unlimited amount of money into riding this one coaster, but I wasn't gonna take any chances. After watching the fate of this coaster change dramatically over the next week, I can say that that gamble definitely paid off. So for those of you guys who have been keeping up with this channel in recent times, you've probably noticed by now that I've been going on this little Top Thrill 2 and Cedar Point posting streak. Well, I promise you guys that this is the last video in that little mini series, but let me just say this coaster definitely deserves it. And also, I know that I'm one of the few and the proud that actually managed to get on this coaster, so I want to share as much of my experiences with you guys who maybe didn't get a chance to ride this thing, even if this video is like 7 or 8 months late or something like that. Okay, so we roll up to Cedar Point and the plan was to, I don't even know why I'm telling you guys, it's pretty obvious. We're gonna rope drop Top Thrill 2. What, did you think we were gonna rope drop the Wild Mouse like a couple of idiots or something? Yo, what up, fools? You clicked on the right video. We're at Cedar Point. And guess what we're about to do? Rope drop a freaking Wild Mouse. Dude, I've never been more excited. This is so stupid. So the plan was to get to Magnum's entrance as fast as possible and just camp it until the park opened. From there, we were just gonna beeline it over to Top Thrill 2 and wait out the rest of the early entry line. As we were walking to Magnum's entrance, we passed by the Windseeker entrance and we decided to test our luck and see if they would let us in there. I mean, if not, we would just go back to our original plan and enter at Magnum. Well, to our surprise, this very nice employee working at the Windseeker entrance practically asked us to come through and let us in about 15 to 20 minutes early. That gave us an incredible start to the day and really helped us out with beating the crowds from main gate to Top Thrill 2. So we started walking over to Top Thrill 2 and it was really cool to enter this plaza and basically be the only people on the pathway. It was this crazy surreal experience to just walk up to this monster of a coaster and basically be the only ones there. It was kind of like the calm before the storm. In my Cedar Point opening weekend video essay, I said, and it was actually really cool to walk up to this plaza the way it was intended and engineered, with the big whole grand entrance to this area and the grand reveal of the coaster. I feel like if we used Magnum's entrance, it just wouldn't have looked nearly as cool or had that much of an effect. But now, after thinking about it, there really is no bad way to approach this ride. I mean, first off, it's by far the tallest thing in the park, and it's definitely the main focal point of the entire park. It was cool to enter the way we did because you got to pass by the spike and the station and the grand entrance to the midway that Top Thrill 2 is located on. But for those entering this midway on the other end by Magnum, well, they're greeted with this ride's absolutely massive and super grand entrance portal. The experience walking up to this traction is really something. I mean, like I said, you can see this thing from anywhere in the park. You're always aware of its presence, so when you finally decide you want to ride it, the anticipation just starts building immediately. As you get closer and closer, the two towers just start getting bigger and bigger, and then finally entering its midway, you're greeted with this super lively atmosphere, which the presentation of this ride is pretty unbeatable. I mean, I know for me, it was like on the level of walking up to something like Velocicoaster for the very first time. It's absolutely unforgettable, and it's something you kind of just have to experience for yourself in person to fully understand just how grand it is. Alright, so let's start talking about the ride experience. Now, I'm sure all of you are well aware by now, but this coaster is essentially an upcharge attraction. You have to put all loose articles into a paid locker. The rider requirements for this one are pretty harsh, but for the history of this coaster, they definitely make sense. My only complaint really is, well, paying for the lockers. The setup here is just very odd, and I'd say it's somewhat flawed. Nah, scratch that. It's actually really flawed. First of all, the lockers upset the flow of the queue line, essentially making 2 lines that you have to wait in for this one ride. The line for the lockers is staged on the main path and somewhat upsets the flow of the midway. Once you put all of your items in a locker, then you can finally enter the real queue line to this ride. And I'm not even gonna lie, even though this coaster's capacity is pretty good, I feel like this coaster's queue line is pretty short. It's essentially just one big straight line going to the station with a half a switchback where you enter the queue and then another half a switchback at the station before you go up the stairs. It's covered, which is obviously an upgrade from the old queue, but there's still not much to look at. Actually, there's less to look at now, but I'd say it's somewhat of a fair trade now keeping the sun off of you. Alright, so you finally climb the stairs and are now standing in the station. And this entire station process is very quick and very efficient. First off, this coaster has both a load and an unload station, which boosts efficiency by a lot. Both of the trains that are always parked in the station are doing something productive and working towards this bigger goal, whether that's being loaded or unloading guests. The fact that both of these can happen at the same time cuts down on so much dead time that could be occurring if the unload station didn't exist. It also helps tremendously that these two can and will operate as two separate stations, also meaning that one is not waiting on another. If the load train is ready to go, then they can send that puppy out to the launch pad without the unload station being ready to advance its train. Still nerding out about this ride's operations, the crew here is also super impressive. With multiple operators on both station floors, these guys were hitting some pretty crazy intervals. And well, they even had to wait a good bit for the train that I was on to actually send it. They're checked, we're ready to go. They just went up the spike. The entire time that we were in line, which was only like 45 minutes, watching these guys, we only saw them stack trains maybe like 2 or 3 times. And it's pretty fair to assume that that was because of a rider or the accessibility program that this ride has, and that's pretty crazy to say. Alright, so I know I was literally just about to start talking about the actual ride experience, you know, the thing that you clicked on this video to see, but it's definitely worth mentioning my thoughts before actually riding this coaster. For those of you guys who don't already know, I am one of, if not the biggest swing launch hater. I don't really get or understand the point, or I guess I should say the gimmick of a swing launch. I've made multiple Pantheon hate videos at this point. Well, I mean, it's just the fact that this also accounts for literally half the ride. Like, I can't tell you on any other coaster where a launch sequence accounts for half of the coaster. Like, I get it, we're going backwards, and then we're going faster, but I really don't want to feel the same elements 3 different times. And then what, that gives you an excuse to cheat me out of a coaster that's actually fulfilling? I can't even tell you how unfulfilling this section is. So it's safe to say that I wasn't all entirely looking forward to Top Thrill 2. I mean, I was totally skeptical from the beginning. So many aspects of this coaster are just not what I wanted to see. I mean, I don't think anyone really wanted Zamperla to touch this coaster. And once that first POV came out looking like this, I can't say that it made me or anybody else any more excited to ride this. And the fact that this coaster also had a swing launch that literally accounts for half the ride, I mean, that's literally my biggest pet peeve when it comes to swing launches. Anyway, my entire point is, I didn't expect this coaster to be much. In fact, I was totally expecting it to be a letdown and a disappointment to me. I mean, literally the entire morning leading up to this first ride, Hessler and I were taking massive dumps all over this coaster.
It's gonna be worse. It's gonna suck. I'm gonna be thinking about Dragster.
They didn't make this coaster rough
the
enough.
whole time. No, Zamperla should have made it rougher. I'm gonna ride it and just be thinking, why aren't my bones even more broken? My bones should be more broken.
It's safe to say that, well, we weren't expecting this coaster to be very much. Well, I was wrong. See, now on the flip side, this thing is the world's 2nd tallest roller coaster. Was the world's 2nd tallest roller coaster. Wait, is the world's tallest coaster? Does this coaster even exist in the year 2025 yet? Okay. On May 5th, 2024, when I rode this coaster, it was the 2nd tallest coaster in operation. And for the sake of this video, which shouldn't have come out 7 months late, it will still be the 2nd tallest coaster. This thing is massive, and it demands this sort of respect. Like, no matter how much hate and shade we are throwing at this coaster, it is still one of the tallest coasters in the world, along with being one of the fastest. Even if we were crapping on it, there's still a part of us that are itching and dying to ride it. Like, no matter how much of a disappointment I think it'll be, there's still this small part of me that's super excited to get on this thing. There's still this part of me that's rooting for the coaster and hoping that I'm wrong. And I think it all goes back to just the respect that this coaster demands. Like, take Pantheon, for example. There is no part of Pantheon that demands your attention or respect. But this 420-foot, 120-mile-an-hour creation that is the main spectacle of this entire park, yeah, it kind of demands your attention. And for a roller coaster, those stats are as respectable as it gets. If you don't know who to root for, always root for the underdog. Some quote, some guy said somewhere, probably. Yeah, no, that little part of me that really wanted to like this coaster, that really wanted this thing to be good, it was freaking great. I absolutely love this coaster. This thing slaps. So, the platform gets cleared and the train starts pulling out of the station. You pull up to the launch pad and let the anticipation start building as you wait for the trains in the station to park so the launch sequence can begin. You're literally just sitting there with your thoughts just staring at this coaster. The anticipation just keeps growing and growing and growing. So the launch sequence starts, you hear all these artificial noises, and then this countdown. Then you get launched to 74 miles an hour. Yeah, this launch is trash. It's pretty bad. I mean, 74 miles an hour isn't slow, and you definitely feel all 74 miles of that hour, but the launch has absolutely no punch. You're essentially just coasting down the launch track, getting slightly faster and faster. And that 74 miles an hour is only going to get you so far up the top hat. The rollback is still a neat feeling, but the fact that you only make it a fraction of the way up the top hat definitely takes away from the overall element. The actual physical launch track itself is just too long for you to get launched this slow, and the top hat is just too tall for you to only get a rollback this tiny. Don't get me wrong, the element isn't bad. 74 miles an hour isn't slow, and you definitely feel it in the rollback, but overall, it just gets overshadowed by the rest of the 420-foot top hat that you're staring up. I mean, this coaster is a totally different breed. As a rider, seeing that you only make it to here on the top hat is mildly disappointing, and that's my one big thing with Top Thrill 2. You advertise a rollback on every ride, well then you should deliver a rollback that's actually good and impressive. That means that you have to launch the train. Actually, let's go back in time to a Michael who was about to get his first ride on Top Thrill 2 to explain this to you guys.
We're here at Top Thrill 2, right? And this is the way that I think that they could execute this coaster perfectly, right? This launch right here, it has to be fast enough to where you actually feel forces on the launch, but you actually get a little something right up through here. But the problem with that is the faster you make this launch, the weaker the acceleration is on the backwards launch to that spike. And then after that, this third launch is going to be the weakest launch of them all. So it's almost like a lose-lose situation. You want this part to be forceful, and you want a good rollback from up here. But yet again, the faster you make it, the more forceful it gets right here, the slower this acceleration is going to be.
So the question is, would weaker second and third launches be worth it for a punchier and faster first launch, along with a better rollback? Who knows? I think that an initial first launch, at least 87 to 95 miles an hour would have been a better option. You know, get the front half of the train to start the twist on the tower. Heck, even make the first launch 100 miles an hour. The direction change, I feel like, is a big enough difference where I feel like you could justify making both the first and the second launch the same around 100 miles an hour. The thing is, the launch track is just too big for you to only be launched to 74 miles an hour. Overall, it's just weak, uneventful, and leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, there's just not much positive to say here. I mean, I guess it's kind of fun to just cruise at 74 miles an hour, but even that's a stretch. I will say though, in its defense, having the ride slowly build up like this, it really helps out with anticipation. The entire time you're just thinking about and anticipating the feeling of that third launch and what it will be like to finally go over that top hat. Which overall, this could be seen as a positive, but the actual ride experience itself can't help that us as riders are sometimes distracted thinking about what's to come, which in the end takes away from what's actually going on in the moment. So first launch and rollback, not terrible, but they leave a lot to be desired. Yeah, the backwards launch is something. So you're falling back down and you hit the straight track and you feel the trains interacting with the LSMs underneath you. Then bam, you're hit with this massive kick. I wouldn't say this is a jolt or anything either. This is definitely a kick. Now comparing this to something like Pantheon, it feels similar just on a much larger scale. Pantheon, however, is different though because the launch track isn't straight. That backwards launch starts in a valley, then throws you up into your lap bar for this really crazy pop of backwards airtime. And if you remember anything from my Pantheon videos, you know that I thought that this was really the only redeeming factor of the swing launch. Okay, so Top Thrill 2. This backwards launch is just crazy. Amazing. By far, my favorite launch, and I'd even go as far to say that it's the best of the 3 launches. I don't even really know how to describe to you what this thing feels like. So after that first initial kick, you just start slowly speeding up faster and faster until you hit that top speed of going 101 miles an hour backwards. It's almost maybe a tiny bit like King Dakaw's launch, where once you get that initial kick, you feel boosts here and there. Actually, I don't know if I like that. I mean, yes, I find slight similarities, but overall, I don't really think that was a great analogy. I mean, yes, it's similar in the way that this launch also has little shifts here and there, but other than that, one similarity, Ka and this launch couldn't be any more different. I don't know, this launch is just like nothing else in the world, and going backwards that fast, you kind of just have to feel it for yourself. All right, so you're cruising. I mean, just absolutely flying down this launch track backwards, and all of a sudden, you're just hit with the most ungodly positives. The pull up into this spike is just so intense. You watch as this roof just flies over you, and then you just get blasted with these crazy positives going backwards. I got it! You start ascending up this spike, and everything around you just now becomes below you. First, it's Rougarou behind you, then it's Power Tower, then you look over and now even Millennium Force is below you. I mean, it's just unreal. Just watching the ground get further and further away, and the people on the path just get tinier and tinier, it's terrifying. As for the forces though, they definitely get overshadowed. Again, talking about this ride being distracting, the spike is just so big and the feeling is so sustained that you quickly get distracted by it when the only thing changing around you are the views. Now, I'm not here to hate on this bike. Well, its views at least, but the forces somewhat underwhelmed me. Now, don't get me wrong, the forces are definitely there, they're just not strong. Well, weightlessness or zero Gs can only be so strong, so I guess a better way to put it, it's just not really what I was expecting. Here, this is what I said in that day. Once you get up to the spike, I don't know, this is where I think the controversy starts a little bit. The weightlessness that everybody else claims they were feeling, I did not feel it nearly to the extent that everybody was hyping it up. And I feel like 2 or 3, maybe out of the 4 people in our group also might agree with that comment. It's there. The force, the weightlessness, whatever you want to call it, weightlessness is definitely there, but not to the full extent that you would want a spike to be. All right, so you max out the spike. You hit the highest point and you start falling. The forces become completely opposite. Instead of all your weight being on your lap bar in front of you, now your seat back catches you and you start falling faster and faster and the ground is rapidly approaching. Then you hit this pull out into this devious little hand chopper. I mean, like, I'm seeing people do some of these as they come down off the spike as I'm watching this coaster. Like, when you're going backwards, you have absolutely no idea when this thing is coming. The covering over you just comes out of nowhere and it scares you half to death. Then this thing tries to kill you with the positives. Then you leave Earth for a second until gravity decides to kick back in and just rip you right back down. Passing the switch track going backwards is literally your only warning to when the spike is coming. And as soon as you see that thing, you better start bracing. Right, so you hit the pull out and engage back with the launch track. You're already going fast and now you start to speed up just a little bit. Now, I liked coasting down the launch track, going near the target speed well over 100 miles an hour. While it has nothing on 120 in like sub 3 seconds, I will say that it was enjoyable to coast, whether that's delusional or not. It also kind of just feels like you're flooring it too. You're getting faster and faster, and now that launch track in front of you just starts disappearing. You're getting closer to that top hat. The moment is finally here. That anticipation is over. The whole ride, you've waited for this, and now it's finally here. It's time for you to go over that top hat. Now, the top hat is the exact same. Nothing about it has been changed except for the way that you ride it. These Intamin accelerator trains are small and compact. The complete opposite of what the Lightning trains are that Zamperla created. Intamin built the top hat with perfect heart lining for their trains, not the trains that Zamperla made. What does this mean for the ride experience? Well, you pull up into the top hat and that's just about the same for the rider. Maybe not the train, but for the rider, still great, still intense, and probably feels pretty similar to the OG Dragster or something like Haw, I could imagine. Now you're ascending the top hat and you're about to hit that direction change and, well, that's where this ride becomes a different beast. Something that I never expected, never anticipated, and never saw coming. You hit this little twist and you're immediately thrown to the side of the train. Along with that, you start floating out of your seat. From that moment on, all the way until the pull out at the bottom of the tower, you get airtime. And while you're getting airtime, all sorts of laterals are just throwing you everywhere. I don't think I could say or do anything right now to do justice for just how crazy this top hat is. So I'm just gonna roll the POV so you guys can really see my real reaction and what I have to say in that exact moment that I wrote it.
Airtime! Airtime! I'm out of my seat! What? Oh my God!
I mean, there's just no way. Nothing I've ever been on even compares to this moment. That little scream coming from us, that's real. Terrified. You're telling me that on this entire tower, me being in back row, this is where the airtime starts? And that's where it ends? And we aren't just talking about some weak little floater. I mean like sustained, strong floater into some of the strongest sustained ejector that just keeps giving and giving. It feels like this should be illegal. No, I'll tell you what really should be illegal here. The laterals. This has some of the most disgusting laterals. I mean like the strongest laterals I've ever felt. Puts anything on Skyrush to shame. Take Skyrush level ejector and mix that with Wild Mouse level laterals, then put it 420 feet into the air, and I'm almost shitting my pants. Mind you, I'm not expecting any of this. I'm not bracing. I'm just sitting there thinking I'm gonna get some nice views from up there and just come right back down. Nope. It is so strong that it literally feels like my lap bar isn't gonna hold me in and I'm just gonna be tossed into one of those supports. I won't even lie. It made me hold on. Never have I ever thought that the top hat would be the standout moment, especially the spiral. And the standout force would be laterals. Never in a million years would I have even thought about that combination and this ride. Everything you've known about these Strata top hats just gets thrown out of the window here. Slow, sprawling views at the top with trim drops, forget about it. Trade that for stupidly bad heartlining, sitting miles above the track and just getting thrown over that top hat. I know I've said this a lot for this coaster, but it's truly something that you just have to experience for yourself. I mean, this coaster as a whole is just on another level. It truly is a different beast. The pull out, just as the pull up, feels similar to as what I imagine the OG Dragster would be like. Then you coast into the brakes and that ends your ride experience. I was able to get 3 rides on this coaster, and something I didn't mention when talking about the ride experience was the differences in where I sat. That's because, well, there really isn't much of a difference. I got a ride in the back row, then near the back, then one ride in like row 3 or 4 or something. This coaster is just so fast and so big that really won't change how the elements feel. I think near the back is a better ride, but the sense of sheer speed near the front is super cool too. Also, it's worth mentioning that the airtime ascending the top hat is also stronger when riding in the front, which also gives this crazy terrifying feeling being that high up and getting thrown around the ascent rather than descending. Also, it's worth mentioning that one ride I got was at night, and it made this bike really cool with all the lights around it, and the top hat just that much scarier and more intense being in the dark. So now getting my experiences out of the way, I want to take some time to answer some of the questions that I myself had, and I feel like you guys would have about this ride. Is this rough? While I think the term rough has become subjective lately, me personally would not call this rough. Now, that's not me saying that there's an absence of roughness from the ride. There's definitely something there. I just wouldn't say it's rough. It's like something I've never felt on any other coaster. It's contained to your lap bar and below. Think of your legs and your feet. They got a little shimmy going on, but up top, it's completely comfortable. I think little shimmy describes this well, and I don't think it takes away from the ride experience whatsoever. If anything, it may just add to the overall intensity a little bit. I also think it's worth mentioning that Zamperla did an absolutely fantastic job masking and faking mid-2000s Intamin track. This is one of my all-time favorite track styles, and not only does it look absolutely amazing, but it rides incredible too. And I'd also say that the majority of those comments go for the launch track as well. Okay, this one's funny. While me and every other person who rode this ride opening weekend and the like one other day that it was open would sit here and praise these trains, they would prove to be quite problematic over the next weeks and will leave this ride in shambles for the rest of the year. And I mean, on face value, these trains are great. They enhance the ride experience. They ride great for how far off the track they are. They look amazing. They feel great. They're comfortable. And what's really cool is the lap bars lock in place once they're locked, so you'll never get stapled. Those trains are fantastic though. Oh, they're amazing. Every aspect of those trains were thought out to a T. They're comfy. Yeah, while it feels stupid to praise these things now, I still don't think I would go back on a single word I've said about them. It's only a matter of time before the problems get found and then they get fixed and this thing opens back up again. I just hope that not too much of the ride or the trains get changed and, well, alters the ride experience that much. The ride is good. It's great even. There are just a few things holding it back from being that 10 out of 10, and I'm not really just talking about the ride experience here. I'm also just talking about the practicality of the coaster as well. Let's start with the ride experience first, then we'll talk about the other aspects of the ride. Like I mentioned, one of the worst parts of this coaster is the opening launch. That first launch is just not punchy and it leaves a lot to be desired. The reason being is the length of the launch track. I talked about earlier modifying the launch speed, but I didn't mention actually modifying the coaster and its layout. With this infield, a lot could be done. Let's say we move the station and the start of the launch pad to halfway down the launch track, or even 5/8 of the way down the launch track, then give the first launch everything we've got. Like the full power of an LSM. In return, that's going to give us a more punchy and more intense opening launch and probably is similar to a better rollback than what we already have. Then falling into the backwards launch, it'll ultimately make it better. The acceleration, along with the length at which you are now traveling at the higher speeds, it'll ultimately just feel better. Then the final launch would be the same as what we have now along with the rest of the ride experience. The braking system would obviously have to be modified, which they already did for Top Thrill 2 anyway, but this, it would just have to take the train further back into the infield, back to the station. Now, that's just my idea for a simple fix to the problem of the first launch. Now, let's mention everything else that's wrong with this ride that has nothing to do with the ride experience. The number one issue is the queue. It's terrible. Reworking the infield and the exit of this coaster would actually allow you to then make the lockers a part of the cohesive system. I think my favorite use of lockers on any ride has to be Wildcats Revenge or Velocicoaster. But for the sake of Cedar Point's situation, I think Wildcats' method just makes more sense. The double-sided lockers being right there at the bottom of the station, allowing riders to put their belongings in right before they get on and retrieve them right after they get off, allows a clean flow while also cutting down on the overall amount of lockers actually needed. This queue needs major reworking, and they definitely have enough room to do it. I hope that they change it in the future because not only is the system in place now messy, it looks bad and it really just doesn't work. It's also absolutely unacceptable that you are charged to use these lockers. That's probably the number one biggest thing that drives me up a wall with this coaster. If anything, I really hope that's the one thing that changes in the upcoming years. Right, so now after all that, it's finally time to talk about why you all clicked on this video. Top Thrill 2. Is it a worthy replacement or a miserable failure? Well, I never got to ride the original Dragster. The closest thing I got to experience to it was King Dakar, and this is what I had to say.
I was like, it's the second tallest coaster in the world. No matter what, there's going to be a degree of hype that no matter what, this coaster is going to have, regardless if it's better or worse than its predecessor. The last time this was open was 2-3 years ago.
Yes.
The fact that you're now finally able to ride whatever version of this thing, one, we're lucky enough to have it, but two, it's just gonna have a certain amount of hype around it because it's this. Fantastic ride though. If there's anything that would replace it, this seems like one of the best options I could have went with.
I went into this extremely skeptical and had my expectations at an all-time low. Coming off this and actually really enjoying it was quite the surprise. And a good surprise at that. My buddy Hessler, who was there also riding the ride with me, has been on OG Dragster, and well, this is what he had to say.
It's good. Dragster, OG Dragster's better, but I do think this is better than Millie, so I do think this is the fourth best ride in the park now. So I think the top 5 is back. The top 5 is back, which is insane to say. Because now this is, again, a must ride every time you come because the insanity factor. I think Dragster's insanity factor is crazier than Top Thrill's insanity factor. Just because 3 seconds to 120 miles an hour, in my opinion, cannot be beat. I think the laterals on this is better because the trains are higher. This is a worthy replacement of Dragster. Worse, but worthy.
Really couldn't have said it any better myself. Yeah, Top Thrill 2 is definitely a worthy replacement. Worse, but worthy. While this used to be a fan favorite and had a cult following, it got stripped of its identity and got new life breathed into it. While that launch will be missed and is missed by everybody who got to experience it, this new version brings newfound love to parts of this coaster that, well, they were once overshadowed by such a crazy element. While this coaster would prove why it's worthy, it would quickly turn into, well, a miserable failure, an absolute disaster, and leave no one to blame but Cedar Point. Just over a week after being open, this ride would undergo an extended closure as the first wave of major problems needed to be fixed with this coaster. Yeah, you heard that right. 1 week. Only 4 days operating. We caught Cedar Point with their pants down and they absolutely hated it. Cedar Point chose quite possibly the worst option to oversee this project, Zamperla. And as much as I love the ride, I don't think Zamperla was the best option. I don't think they were in the top 3. Hell, I don't even think they were in the top 5 best options. Zamperla touching this coaster is, well, something no one really wanted or even trusted. But Cedar Point did it anyway. I think the park wanted something cheap, they wanted something quick, and they wanted to have full control manipulating the final product into something they want and approve of. That only left Zamperla. When everything absolutely blew up in their face, they didn't want to take any of the blame for it, throwing one of the biggest hissy fits I've ever seen from any park. When, in the end, this was all their fault. They were the ones who decided to go with Zamperla, the company that was completely unqualified for a task like this. It's wild to me how completely immature and unprofessional Cedar Point handled this, trying to drag Zamperla's name into the mud. For example, let's take a look at the differences between these two statements made by two different parks around the same time. Notice how all of these updates mention Zamperla specifically by name, the ride's manufacturer, and the company who's overseeing the project. The average consumer and Cedar Point's average guest doesn't know who Zamperla is and really doesn't care about them. They could care less about Zamperla or the ride, they just want to see it open. Cedar Point adding that little detail and trying to blame the ride's manufacturer multiple times in one statement is straight up just a jab at Zamperla. Compare that to Thorpe Park's statement where they use the words like we and our. It's worth noting that when a park works with a manufacturer, they're a team. Once they sign that contract, they're both on the same side. Cedar Point and their PR team obviously could have cared less about that, and they decided to take every jab at Zamperla they could get, releasing multiple updates with none of them getting any more professional. Let's even go back to 2023 when Wildcats Revenge had extended closures twice in the summer. Hershey Park didn't do that. Especially not in 2021 when Skyrush had a major incident and was closed for 4 months. Or even before that when Storm Runner was closed for well over a year. Let's go to Great Adventure in the same season even. King Nakao was closed for over a month in the middle of the season, and Jersey Devil didn't even open for half the season. Let's look at Steel Curtain at Kennywood and how that has had some of the worst downtime in coaster history. We didn't see any of these parks throwing a fit and try and chew out the ride's manufacturers for just technical downtime and delays. It's unbelievable. It's a prototype coaster being worked on by a manufacturer who doesn't even have a right to touch that project with a 20-foot pole. And all of this gets followed up by the park being like, oh my god, we need to fix this. Let's dump even more investment into this park, cover it up, and make it all right, just hoping that everyone forgets about this big mess. And for their third coaster edition in back-to-back-to-back years, they get another coaster that they not only didn't deserve, but one that is on paper even more gimmicky and even more prototype than Top Thrill 2. Ay, some people just never learn. Shit hits the fan, what do? Let's add another coaster that's the first of its kind and also a huge gimmick. There's no thought behind this whatsoever. Only some major last minute scrambling, trying to make things seem somewhat better for themselves. Now, this isn't me trying to hate on Vekoma. I actually really like them as a company, and I think they've been killing it recently. But you gotta admit, it would be kind of funny if this thing went down for like a month or something for some technical downtime, and karma would get them once again. Top Thrill 2. What started out as a worthy replacement only lasted like 4 days before it turned into a miserable failure. What started out as a nice simple review kinda turned into a heated little hate video in the likes of what I did to Pantheon and Busch Gardens, but I tried to make one of, if not the most detailed reviews of this coaster, along with bringing up topics I don't really see people talking about too much. I know most, if not all coaster lovers didn't get to experience this ride while it was open for the first time. I, being as lucky as I was to snag a few rides on it, wanted to bring you guys a video as detailed as I could about this coaster. All we can do is hope that this ride gets fixed and it opens again soon so more people can experience this absolute beast. I know, I get it, this video was obnoxiously long, but thank you to every single one of you who have made it this far into the video. Thank you guys so much for your never-ending support, and I will see you guys all in the next one.